Hello, everyone. My name is Mrs. Darkangelis, and I'm happy to be reading with you today. I retired in September after 44 years as an educator, 29 of those years in the Kalamazoo Public Schools. I was most recently the Director of Elementary Education when I really enjoyed working with the elementary principals, including Mrs. Dewey at Spring Valley. Now that I'm retired, I am helping my kindergarten and sixth grade grandchildren with their remote learning at home. They are KPS students just like you. I look forward to helping principals, teachers, and students in the future when we're able to return to school. Today, I will be reading to you about a man named Ignatius Sancho. He lived mostly in England in the 1700s. He was a writer, a shop owner, and a composer of music, poetry, and plays. He lived as a slave and as a free man. He spoke out against the slave trade in England. So let's learn some more about him. First of all, here's his picture. And this is what the chapter says. Ignatius Sancho was a British composer and writer. Although he was formerly enslaved, he taught himself to read and eventually spoke out against the slave trade. Charles Ignatius Sancho was born in 1729 on a slave ship crossing the Atlantic Ocean heading to South America. Both of his parents died when he was a baby. As an orphan, he was brought to England where he was enslaved and sold to three sisters. Later, he worked for the Duke of Montague. The Duke was impressed by Ignatius's wit and intelligence and gave him books to encourage his education. Ignatius taught himself to read and write. Though it is unknown how, Ignatius became emancipated, that means freed, and was paid wages for his work. He continued to develop his skills in reading and writing, and he began speaking out against the slave trade. He also wrote music, poetry, and plays. Ignatius was not only educated, he was well liked by the British elite or the wealthy, powerful people in England. After he left the English household, he and his wife opened a grocery store where many politicians, writers, actors, and artists would gather. Ignatius became a successful businessman in his community. He got to know several leading politicians and did not shy away from offering his advice or opinions. He often wrote about politics and the economy, and he used his popularity to spread his message and share his views, especially against enslavement. Ignatius began writing letters to abolitionists, people who wanted to end slavery, boldly criticizing the British for their part in the slave trade. Because he was so well respected, Ignatius remained a prominent figure in his community until his death in 1780. There is a quote at the end of this chapter that says, "Alas, time leaves the marks of his rough fingers upon all things." It sounds like history touches the future in lots of ways, doesn't it? I've been reading my whole life and I love it. I learn a lot and I enjoy it too. I hope that each of you reads now and in your future. Learn as much as you can through reading about Black heroes like Ignatius Sancho and lots of other people and things too. Did you know that Ignatius Sancho was said to be the first person of African descent to vote in a British election? He was also the first Black British composer to publish music. He wrote many letters against the slave trade. I learned this information when reading another article about him because I was curious. Keep reading. You'll be glad you did.